Dear brothers and sisters, today, as we begin a new week in ordinary time, God invites us to look at our lives with honesty, courage, and faith. In the first reading, Genesis 12 verses 1 to 9, we meet Abram, a man asked to leave behind everything familiar, his home, his family, his past, to follow God into the unknown. He doesn't receive a map or clear details. All he has is trust. Just like us, Abram walks by faith, not by sight. In the Gospel, Matthew 7 verses 1 to 5, Jesus speaks clearly and lovingly. Stop judging, that you may not be judged. He reminds us that before we point out the small faults in others, we must first recognize the wounds and pride within our own hearts. These two readings, though very different, speak the same truth. Real faith means letting go of control, of judgment, of fear, and trusting that God walks with us, even when we cannot see the way. Let us now open our hearts to today's reflection and ask God to help us walk forward with humility, trust, and mercy. May this ordinary day become holy as we journey together with Him. The Journey of the Heart, a reflection for ordinary days. Monday, June 23rd, 2025, 12th week in ordinary time. It was early morning when David stood by the edge of the hospital bed, his hand resting on the small, frail fingers of his father. The hallway outside was quiet. Machines beeped softly, and in that stillness, everything felt fragile. His father had always been the strong one, the one who taught him to ride a bike, who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, who never missed Sunday Massachusetts. Now he was tired, silent, his eyes half closed. As David sat down beside him, he whispered, "I don't know what life looks like after this." Leaving without knowing where. In today's first reading from Genesis 12, God says to Abram, "Go forth from your land, your relatives, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you." God doesn't give a map. He doesn't lay out the destination in perfect detail. He simply says, "Go. Trust me." Abram was 75. That's not typically the age you begin bold adventures. But Abram obeyed. He took his wife, Sarai, his possessions, and his nephew Lot, and he stepped into the unknown. That kind of faith, raw, unfiltered trust, is hard. It's the kind of trust we're asked to live out not just in moments of clarity and triumph, but in the foggiest, most uncertain days of our lives. Just like David standing in a hospital room, not knowing what comes next. Just like you and me, trying to hold on when the future is blurry, the path unclear, and our hearts are tired. Then we hear Jesus in today's Gospel from Matthew 7 say something direct and challenging. Stop judging, that you may not be judged. Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? It's uncomfortable, but it's honest. We live in a world quick to judge and slow to listen. We see people's faults faster than we see their pain. We call out mistakes without understanding the wounds behind them. And yet, Jesus invites us to pause, not to ignore sin or truth, but to approach each other with the same mercy He offers us. Saint Therese of Lisieux once wrote, "If you are willing to bear serenely the trial of being displeasing to yourself, you will be for Jesus a pleasant place of shelter." In other words, God isn't looking for perfect people. He's looking for humble hearts, hearts that admit their brokenness, and yet still trust in His love. That same spirit of humility is what allows us to love others better too. There's a story told about Father Henri Nouwen, the Dutch Catholic priest and theologian who left behind a prestigious academic life at Harvard and Yale to live and serve among the disabled community at Larchie in Canada. People were surprised by his decision. Why leave behind books, lectures, and fame? But Father Henri felt something stirring. He once wrote, "The more willing I was to let go of my desire to control my life, the more I grew in trust. God is a God of the present. He began to see the people around him not as projects or students, but as companions, fragile and beautiful, just like him. He let go of judgment. He let go of certainty. And in return, he found a deeper intimacy with Christ. Like Abram, like Jesus' call to mercy, like David at the hospital bed, he learned that God shows up most clearly when we let go of needing to understand everything. We often carry beams in our eyes, judgments, prejudices, unhealed grief. And because of them, we hurt others and ourselves without realizing it. There was a woman in her late 40s named Linda who once shared how her relationship with her sister had been broken for over a decade. Harsh words had been exchanged at a family gathering, and silence followed for years. Linda often told others how cold and prideful her sister was. One day, during adoration, Linda sat silently before the blessed sacrament. She felt a whisper deep within her soul. "You are carrying a beam." It wasn't condemnation, it was clarity. She saw how her own pain, pride, and unspoken longing for reconciliation had blinded her. She left the chapel that evening and wrote a letter to her sister, not to justify, but to ask forgiveness. Months later, they met. Tears were shed. Healing began, not because one was right and one was wrong, but because mercy finally had room to breathe. David didn't get all the answers in that hospital room. His father passed away 2 days later. There was sorrow, of course, but there was also something else. Peace. "I didn't get a miracle," David would later say, "but I got faith. The kind of faith Abram had. The kind that walks forward even when you can't see the road." In the days that followed, he returned to church, not out of obligation, but out of need. He found new friends. He began volunteering with young men going through grief. He stopped assuming everyone had it all together. He started seeing people with softer eyes. And every morning, he prayed, "Lord, help me carry only what's mine to carry. Help me love without judgment. And help me walk, even when I cannot see the way." Today's readings are gentle but firm invitations. God isn't asking us to have perfect maps or perfect lives. He's asking for hearts willing to trust, to move, and to let go of judgment, of control, of bitterness. Like Abram, we are each being called, maybe not to another land, but to another level of surrender. Like Jesus teaches, we are each invited to stop pointing fingers long enough to notice our own need for healing. And when we do, when we walk forward, not with pride, but with humility, we discover that God has already gone ahead of us. That is the journey of the heart. That is the beauty of ordinary days made sacred by grace. So wherever you are today, whether in clarity or confusion, with joy or with pain, remember, you are not walking alone, and the one who calls you to go is the same one who promises to never let you fall. Amen.